to the sideline. He's looking down the middle, looking for other options. Oliver comes in. Oh, and he gets it away for the touchdown. Got it away, had enough time to find Hardman.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Nothing like a little Denver Broncos, LA Chargers Monday Night Football game to make you feel better about a Chiefs loss. For those who missed it, overtime consisted of 16 plays between those two teams for a total of 16 yards. Broncos had -9 net passing yards in second half or overtime. The Chargers won that game on a muffed punt Chargers won that game after a muffed punt required them to only have to kick a field goal and gain no yardage to win the game. What a time to be alive. Russell Wilson under contract for another 3 years after this, by the way. Appreciate you for tuning in to this episode of KCSN Update, your daily Chiefs video and podcast from us here at KC Sports Network. I'm BJ Kissel, and it's Tuesday, which means we will be joined by our guy, Nate Taylor from The Athletic, for our 5 burning questions. And let's not waste any time right now, and let's get right into it. You can find him on Twitter at @NateTaylor. Nate, first burning questions. We're getting right into this. We're not wasting any time because I saw you tweet this last night, and it just was a perfect intro, perfect segue question. And this first burning question comes from a one Holly Taylor. And quote, "They put this trash on Monday Night Football.
Yes.
Why? Why do they keep I think I know the answer, but give me why do they keep subjecting us to Russell Wilson and this AFC West that was supposed to be so good?"
Yeah, it was supposed to be so good. Look, we convinced TV executives to stop thinking about the NFC East. You know how hard that is to be like, no, not putting the Cowboys on prime time all the time, or hey, the Giants and the Eagles and the I guess Commanders. I mean, let's remove them from the discussion entirely. But we convinced TV executives that like the most entertaining, the most storylines were in the West Coast. And man, Russell Wilson, it is just, he's played one good quarter of football, and we saw it last night, BJ. And I appreciate that my wife just grinded through, like there's nothing after this, so for her to ask, I think the question that everybody was asking, and it's so funny for me to like put it out there just so like, hey, this is, we are also suffering with you on Twitter or on social media as you go through this game. Because look, I have to watch that game because it sort of matters for my job, right? I have to understand what's going on with the teams in the division. Holly is aware of this. She remembers when Russell Wilson was like really good and fun to watch and like took the Seahawks to like heights they had never really been before. Man, when it goes quickly in this sport. And I'm not saying that like Russell Wilson is comparable to like what Chiefs fans experienced with Daniel Sorensen, but it is really fascinating for a quarterback to essentially be playing through injuries, to not make good decisions, and for the offensive lines for both teams to just like sort of collapse at the most important times of the game. There were some people that were saying, hey, at least I feel better about the Chiefs offensive line after watching, as you said, BJ, no one can move the football in like the middle of the fourth quarter or in overtime. I don't know how we did this, but we're never getting TV executives back, BJ. I mean, we're never getting them back. Like they're going to be like, okay, the formula. See, this is why we created a formula for like Cowboys. What are the Cowboys doing? Okay. Then it's like Giants, Eagles, the Chiefs will obviously be relevant because they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but the Raiders thought they had us. The Raiders got us with Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones. The Chargers, I thought, made every appropriate move that was available to them with a star quarterback on a rookie contract. They didn't play J.C. Jackson yesterday, BJ. They just said, sit over there. Like, you're not helping us in coverage. And then, of course, the Broncos made probably the most desperate move because they were the most desperate team in the division with giving not only Russell Wilson a new contract, but basically being so lustful for Aaron Rodgers that they hired Nathaniel Hackett with no guarantee that they were going to trade for Aaron Rodgers. And now you're stuck with this uncomfortable pairing where, yeah, we all have to ask ourselves, how much of this trash do I have to watch? And unfortunately, the Broncos are going to be playing in London. I guess you could choose to stay asleep for that game. And when they do play the Chiefs, at least as of now, they're scheduled to be in prime time. So, like,
oh my God.
I know, but like, yeah, my wife is like, so like they don't have first round picks, right? And I go, yeah, they don't have no, they don't have second round picks either.
He's under contract for another 3 years.
He's under contract for how long? And I was like, well, for like 3 to 4. Is he good anymore? Not right now. What can they do? Probably fire the coach, like, or like fire everyone because like it's under new ownership. So look, when my wife is out here saying this is trash, like you've lost everybody. Because my wife is pretty generous when it comes to like, hey, this is entertaining, this is football, I enjoy it. But nah, man, she was disgusted with last night's outcome.
I was sitting there watching last night. I don't know why. If it's like a really good football game between good teams, like I'm following along on social media, put my kids to bed and everything.
Exactly.
It's like,
yes.
I don't, for whatever reason, it doesn't entice me to want to go watch like great football games between a couple of teams like in the NFC. Like I don't really care about. This was a little different because obviously the games, AFC West division, but again, people just talking about how bad it was. It was such a weird thing though, because the first quarter, all of the Russell Wilson defenders came out and on social media, it was like, we told you so. You don't doubt this guy. And then it's just like freezing cold takes. It was like first quarter to second half. It was like, we told you, like you were too quick. Like you got to let it breathe a little bit before you get there. But yeah, it is interesting to watch. And like you said, maybe when you lose it, you just lose it. I was watching the video that Jeff Schwartz broke down on social media. And he was like, these are basic passing protection rules. And he was kind of explaining what Russell should know as a quarterback at a very basic level at the NFL. And he's just not seeing it, not doing it the right way, or throw some conspiracies out there. He really is in Pete Carroll's pocket and they're just trying to give them a top 2 draft pick. I think they're already in the top 5 right now.
I mean, we can't be this far into conspiracy road, guys. Put the car in park.
Listen, you tell me how we got here, but all I can tell you as a Chiefs fan is that there were so many tweets, there were so many receipts that needed to be gathered that I will go back and advanced Twitter search all of these tweets from everyone in the division, from Raiders fans to Broncos, Chargers, everybody coming for the king with all the moves that they were making, winning in the offseason. Congratulations, here's your trophy. Your $20 million cornerback isn't even playing in prime time.
And of course, Joey Bosa unfortunately is hurt, which takes away the advantage of having Khalil Mack, having that pair. I said it in like one of our first videos, BJ. I needed to see it from the Broncos.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Like I trust the Chargers because that quarterback is young and still probably ascending, maybe at a slower pace than we anticipated. There's really no change in the Raiders, and I needed to see it in the Broncos, and I don't like what
Broncos
I'm seeing.
Broncos defense is good. Like I will take that. Like I think their defense is pretty good.
Who have they played, BJ?
I'm not going there. I'm trying to find some silver linings.
Who have they played? Geno Smith was cooking them for a half. Now probably
don't knock Geno Smith.
That's what I'm saying. Geno Smith is the best quarterback they've played outside of obviously what they did yesterday.
He's leading the NFL in like multiple passing categories.
Hey man,
I go back to my analysis from like a decade ago. Geno Smith was my guy.
Is Geno Smith the new Rich Gannon? Like what is happening?
You telling me to put the car in park?
I just wanted to say that. Doesn't necessarily mean I believe it, but yeah, like outside, I mean, they did do well with Justin Herbert
Yeah.
yesterday, but I don't know. Like, here's the thing that like will really develop between end of October to early November. Will that defense be so demoralized because they know, oh, we just have to pitch a shutout. We can't let anybody get in the end zone. Like, if that will have a cumulative effect. But yeah, their defense is good, but I also think they haven't played they haven't played the top quarterbacks really until yesterday.
For sure.
And they still got beat because they realized that the offense is not complimenting them really at all, except for that first quarter.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on to some Chiefs stuff here as we get on to our second question. And this is something that you're probably prepared for if you check social media this morning. But per ESPN's Field Yates, this tweet is from him. The Chiefs have restructured the contract of all-pro tight end Travis Kelce, converting base salary into a signing bonus to clear $3.455 million in cap space per source. Nate, what does it mean?
All right, BJ. This is where I put on my executive front office sort of cap. And, you know, one of the first conversations we had way back before training camp was like, the thing I'm trying to get better at is understanding the layers of said moves for the team. This is pretty simple. BJ, was Travis going to make this money this year?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's an easy decision. Like, I think it actually helps Travis and his agents feel better. It's just like, oh, well, we're just going to get that money now. Great. You're just going to cut us a check. Cool. It does create cap space, and they do need it because you always want to be at the table when it comes to the trading deadline. And we've seen a trade already for various reasons because it's an absolute, I mean, is it a garage sale in Carolina or is it just like come and just take it off the curb?
I think we'll find out with Brian Burns.
And this is where it's headed. So if it comes to a Brian Burns conversation, you at least want to be at the table. You at least want to have some flexibility to say, hey, we are a possible destination or a possible trading partner. You know, a lot of people will ask in the next couple weeks. I think you should still, if I were representing Odell Beckham Jr., I would wait till after the trading deadline. You don't want to necessarily be in the mix right now. You want to be in it more as you get closer to like the middle of November. And obviously you would have a better sense of what teams can offer you from a salary cap standpoint. All this means is that the Chiefs now have more cap flexibility, that they could potentially do something. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll do something, but they do have money of which to spend that they did not have earlier. And if you do not use that money, BJ, what I try to tell people all the time is much of this season, much of the Tyreek Hill trade was about long-term thinking. You can save this money that you just created if a deal doesn't come together, if you don't want to give up a future draft pick, if you don't want to necessarily, you know, like let's say Sky Moore blossoms over the next month. Well, then maybe there's less of a need for Odell Beckham Jr. Well, you can roll that money into next year's salary cap, and that gives you a bigger cushion so that you are a bigger player for free agency. Now, I know it's only, you know, 3 or 4 million, but every little dollar matters. I mean, anybody who's going through a budget will understand if you give me extra dollars, I can now save it or spend it in a different way than I had anticipated earlier. So it's more of an accounting thing right now, but it does give the Chiefs a chance to sort of say, hey, you know, does Brian want to play for us? Because, you know, we have draft picks. We have multiple draft picks in certain rounds that are still considered valuable. So I'm just saying, you know, if there's a chance and you want to just get rid of everybody, then Kansas City is at least within the mix compared to maybe, you know, 8 to 12 other teams in the league.
Yeah, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, before the end of this video and some more positions and different things with in regards to the trade deadline, because I think you mentioned the name right there, Odell Beckham. And it's not just the name, it's the receiver that can beat man coverage. And Sky Moore,
if he's healthy,
great example.
Hello.
Even
the dogs want OBJ. Okay.
They are into the idea of the other OBJ coming to
if you could tell
Kansas
me he's
City.
healthy, if he's fully healthy or getting close to healthy, and he can still beat man coverage the way he did last year, then yeah, you're on to something here, BJ.
Yeah, it was interesting. We had the storyline, or we had the talking point going into the game against Buffalo, that Buffalo had played 85% zone coverage on the year. Played more zone than just about anybody else in the NFL. And the Chiefs had faced more man coverage than any other team in the NFL. And like, which one was going to meet in the middle? Like, was Buffalo just going to keep doing what they were doing? It's the reason that we talked about Travis Kelce's going to have a big day. This is a game that Juju Smith-Schuster may have a big game. He's a zone coverage, intermediate across the middle type guy. And we saw that. But even though they played a lot of zone, I think it was like 53% zone, Buffalo played more man coverage against the Chiefs than they had all year.
Right.
And that's just telling you that what the coaches and the people scheming this up are seeing against the Chiefs offense is, you want to play man coverage against these guys, they need to find some people that can go out and beat man coverage consistently and not make Patrick Mahomes necessarily go God mode all the time to complete passes in all these different ways, scrambling out of the pocket, throwing sidearm and all these very tight windows.
Right.
Go get somebody that can beat man coverage consistently. And we know Odell Beckham is one of those guys. All right, let's move on to the third question. Actually, before we move on to the third question, I know it's really exciting to sit here and talk about all these potential trades and additions and all these things, but you can make every play feel this exciting with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and their unbeatable offers. Right now, new customers can make any $5 bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. And check this out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. Nate, and looking ahead, the Chiefs are 3-point favorites on the road against the 49ers on Sunday with an over-under of 48 points. To make things even sweeter, you can throw down on stepped up same game parlays once per game day all season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code KCSN to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook using code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, Nate, sticking with that theme of the trade deadline, if the Chiefs are going to make a trade, is it going to be, give me a 1, 2, 3 priority: pass rush, offensive tackle, other?
It's probably pass rush, then other, then tackle. Guys, I'm going to tell you this right now. I don't know how rare it is for teams to trade for an offensive tackle in the middle of the season. I don't think it's happened since I've started covering the league. BJ, are you aware of such a situation?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, not one that immediately comes to mind. And you have to think, like, last year, because OBJ, I think, was released and then he signed with the Rams. But you could basically call that a similar mid-season move. Obviously, the Chiefs signed Josh Gordon last year. I just get the sense that, like, it's usually corners, pass rushers, and receivers who are easy to sort of trade in the middle of the season. Now, you have to simplify for some of those guys, obviously, when they come to their new teams. Running back has been kind of devalued or re-understood as a position in football that you don't see a lot of trades involving running backs. Usually it is just a release and a pickup elsewhere situation. But obviously people are going to be fascinated with Christian McCaffrey because this contract situation makes it a little more tenuous to move him, or it's tedious from a cap standpoint. Like, one of the things to ask the Panthers is, look, if you want to go to like the Chicago Bears levels and you want to strip this thing all the way down, by the way, Bears at least have a quarterback that might be good. Carolina doesn't have anything. So if you want to really strip this thing down, how much are you willing to eat some salary, right? That was the big thing for Von Miller when he went to the Rams last year, was like the Broncos had to eat salary while also getting a draft pick basically in exchange for it. Now, with the Chiefs, I don't think the tackle situation is going to be there. If you look around the league, pressure rates are in essence going up because I think teams are not blitzing as much because they're getting home easier with just traditional pass rushing. So everybody is looking for tackle help, or at least for more consistency from their tackles. by and large. So I don't think you're going to get a trade there. The other, I think, is receiver, which I would put in that sort of 2 category.
Okay.
You know, obviously that's, you know, not necessarily Odell Beckham Jr. because he's obviously a free agent, but like you could look around and just see, like, is there a receiver that is possibly on the market that you want to give, you know, a decent amount of, you know, draft capital to do. But I would put that in the other category more so than running back, unless the Panthers are going to just eat salary to get off of Christian McCaffrey. And then lastly, like, it goes to Burns. Like, where does Burns want to play? That would be the most fascinating to me. Is like, okay, the Panthers really have no incentive to keep you. So the issue becomes, can you find a trade partner that you're comfortable with as a player, and they're willing to give the asset to make the deal, really to consummate the deal. For the Chiefs, I don't know how that necessarily is going to work. I mean, they made a smaller move with obviously bringing Carlos Dunlap into the mix. Frank Clark has had another sort of roller coaster season where he's been, fluctuating in terms of his production at times. And yeah, everything sort of falls on Chris Jones, especially now with Turk Wharton, not being there to be more of a depth piece for the defensive line. So I think the Chiefs will likely try to get more pass rushing help because that is what Steve Spagnuolo obviously prioritized most in his defensive philosophy. But again, after saying all that, I'm not going to be surprised if the Chiefs don't make a trade. If the Chiefs stay pat, or if they understand that like a deal didn't come perfectly together the way they want it, and they just say, we have to think about not only this year, but future years, obviously with the Mahomes contract, with obviously trying to extend their reign in the AFC. And you don't want to necessarily make, rash decisions or a decision now that may not be beneficial to you in December, January, and perhaps early February.
Yeah, and talking about Brian Burns, I was just looking up his contract situation because he is on the last year of his rookie deal, but he has exercised the 5th-year option through Carolina, which guarantees him $16 million next season. And looking at him, he's got 4 sacks already this year, had 9 sacks last year, 9 sacks in 2020, 7.5 in 2019. So he's a solid player.
Yeah.
But one of the other things, and you know this as well as anyone, being around the team and being around Coach and Brett to a huge extent, on the way that they like to make sure they're very strategic with how they throw around big contracts. And, you make a trade like that, and if you give up any kind of an asset for a Brian Burns, it might not be a 1-year rental, where you want to give some sort of an extension and keep them around long term. It's a really hard thing to do for a player that you personally don't know how he's going to fit into the locker room. You don't know his work habits. You don't know the way he goes about his business, and that reverberates around the locker room. If you give a big contract to a guy that hadn't stepped in that locker room yet, he comes in and doesn't fit in. It's a really bad culture type move, and those are the things that the Chiefs just do not do, that sometimes kind of get lost when you look on paper and it's like, okay, pass rush help, pass rusher, connect the dots, here we go. There's so much more to it. But they can do it without having to give the big deal, make him come in and show that he can buy in and check his work habits and how he gets along with his teammates and coaches and all those kinds of things, and it's a perfect fit. Awesome. Unless there's people on the staff that have worked with him before, don't know. You'd really have to dig into it to learn a little bit about him. And that's why you have scouts. That's why you got all those guys. But one of those interesting things in talking about trading for guys that could require a pretty big investment, you got to be aware of those things as well. All right, let's move on to the 4th burning question. And we know we got Willie Gay Jr. back in the building. Saw his Instagram post. He's obviously excited to be back. But I want to ask you more about the cornerback coming back that we've only seen basically play for a half a quarter so far this season, and the first pick in the draft for the Chiefs this past year, and Trent McDuffie. I know it's hard because, stats with cornerbacks and all of that, but what should a realistic expectation be for Trent McDuffie coming back to this Chiefs defense? Because we know Steve Spagnuolo likes to be aggressive. He likes to send the house anyway, even if it's because you can't get pressure without sending the house. But either way, he's an aggressive guy, and that puts those cornerbacks on an island a lot. So talking about Trent McDuffie, what should be a realistic expectation be for what Chiefs fans should expect when he gets back out on the field?
Yeah, BJ, I'm going to be a little bit building some stuff off of what we learned in the draft, right? Or what we can sort of translate and hopefully pull in. it's a little bit interesting to know that like Trent McDuffie was excellent. He didn't give up a target in the Arizona Cardinals game before obviously his left hamstring injury. What I think might make this so interesting is that the Chiefs by and large are known as a man-to-man coverage team, a press man team. That's why they drafted Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams. Well, one of the more versatile players on the defense could actually be Trent McDuffie, which could sort of change some of the coverage schemes on the back end, right? L'Jarius Sneed can play zone. Obviously, you have two quality safeties in Justin Reed and Juan Thornhill. You are never going to be tested quite like you were last week against the Buffalo Bills. I truly believe that in terms of quarterback and collection of receivers. But I do think McDuffie probably adds a little bit more versatility in like, hey, maybe you can play some mix and matching zones. Obviously, he has the fluidity, if he's fully healthy, to be someone who can obviously be excellent in man coverage too. But I get the sense that like it just gives a little less of a need to perhaps blitz from Steve Spagnuolo. And from a ball skill standpoint, Joshua Williams in the locker room Sunday told me, BJ, I've got to execute better. And what he meant by that was I got to get more of a press on Gabriel Davis on that deep shot because it's going to take time, similar like it was for Travarius Ward in years 1 and 2, to get his head around, to be comfortable locating the ball and improving his ball skills. That has not been an issue for Trent McDuffie. We saw in training camp quite a bit that he was one of the better cornerbacks on the roster, whether that's with L'Jarius Sneed and Rashad Fenton at locating the ball, getting his eyes on the ball, and actually trying to make a play on it. And so if you're in a similar situation moving forward, hopefully Trent McDuffie can get his head around quicker and can make a play on the ball instead of just trying to rely so much on the physical gifts of pressing and obviously having speed to stay with the receiver hip for hip. I just love the idea that with McDuffie and the hopeful return of Brian Cook, who was in the concussion protocol, they can do mix and matching more based on what the other team presents on offense. And that's something that they couldn't do against the Buffalo Bills. It's like, hey, Joshua Williams, he's going to be in this spot. Jalen Watson is going to be in that spot. And you know that L'Jarius Sneed is basically going inside out based on obviously his experience and just his overall talent. Rewatching the game, BJ, they really never tested L'Jarius Sneed because why would why? Yeah. We have a rookie on the outside and another rookie on the outside. I think with Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, we'll see what happens with Rashad Fenton because he needs to obviously improve if he comes back from his own hamstring injury, is that they could do a little bit more mixing and matching and they could probably play more elaborate zone coverage while also still having man principles at their disposable in the secondary.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have made the point that there's no such thing like no moral victories, nothing like that, but they held Buffalo to 24 points with not a full squad, with a lot of young guys, still early-ish in the season.
Say it again, BJ, because I want Chiefs fans to hear this. Like, just like I know we're however many minutes into the show, but like, how many points did the Chiefs give up on Sunday to like the number 2 offense in the league?
24, with a missed field goal, red zone interception from Patrick Mahomes. There were a handful of plays. We talked about this we had a show called 10 Things I did yesterday on Monday. You can go check that out. There were a handful of plays that you take back that people forget about after the game. We talked about the missed field goal. That's an easy one to remember. You remember the Michael Burton play?
Oh,
the only play that went to Michael Burton. That's a touchdown.
That's what
I'm going to go back.
Yeah, that's what
it is a touchdown.
Yeah, Seth Kaiser, obviously my dear friend and colleague at The Athletic, who does our Times Ours podcast, he believes that too, BJ. He was obviously at the game on Sunday. He made the 10-hour drive and the 10-hour drive back.
I saw your guys' pictures out at Char Bar.
Yeah, poor Seth, who's like, now I have to get in the car and drive for 10 hours. But that's all he talked about after the game was like, Nate, it was the perfect play call or the perfect, audible to that play. Michael Burton is so wide open.
And that was early in the fourth quarter and they kicked a field goal. I mean, that was at it was 1st and 10 from the 26, and they ended up kicking a 44-yard field goal. They lost a yard after that play on that drive overall with everything that had happened. But between that and then the Creed Humphrey on the RPO that kind of got stalled out a little bit, they got called on the MVS touchdown. They got called back because of the penalty. And that was the same drive that Patrick Mahomes ended up throwing the interception. So again, there's these hidden plays, and that's what the margin of error is. But, you know, take it for what it's worth, and everybody can feel really upset knowing that, damn, now we're not going to host the AFC title game again. And I think Nick Wright called it the Arrowhead Invitational. That's because of what it's been for the last 4 years. But you got to go to Buffalo. If that ends up being the worst case of this game, you lost to another juggernaut in this league. But make no mistake, those are two teams on a completely different tier. There is no, I think somebody said this on social media, there's no other boogeyman. There's nobody you have to worry about, like, oh, what about this other team? Like, no, that's the team. And you just went toe to toe with them without some of your people. Now, to be fair, they didn't have Micah Hyde, they didn't have Tre'Davious White. And so they weren't at full strength either.
Right.
But these teams are very close, and we're talking about a handful of plays making the difference. So if you're looking for a game to be super upset about afterwards, like, for me, that ain't it. Like, I'm not feeling great about losing a game, but I don't feel like they're that far off either. And we got a bunch of young guys, and we're getting some of our better players back. So
yeah,
I'm not worried about it.
It really makes for a great rivalry, right? Because you just know that, like, both of these teams are capable of winning now. Like, there's no more like, hey, this team was established and this was an up and coming team that needed the playoff experience, that needed to get blown out in that AFC Championship game a couple years ago. But last year proved it, right? That they are on equal status, equal tiers, to your point. And look, BJ, I'm ready to go online shopping, man. I'm ready to, like, give me the biggest puffy coat you've ever seen, because Buffalo is one of the few places I have yet to see a game. Because when they played, when they played Buffalo in 2020 in the rain, that was during the pandemic season. So obviously I watched from home. I didn't really travel to road games that season because we didn't have a vaccine at the time. God bless our medical experts. With that being said, like, yeah, it's like one of the few places I haven't been is to Orchard Park, is to AT&T Stadium, because the Chiefs only play the Cowboys like once every 4 years. So, like, there's like maybe 4 or 5 cities that I haven't been to that I haven't seen a game in person. But man, I'm ready. I'm ready to get my Timberlands out. I'm ready to get my big coat. I'm ready to wear like the puffiest. Like, can I get like a European, like, just gigantic hat to, like, cover my ears? It's gonna be freezing.
You're gonna need it
there.
Oh my
God, it's gonna be cold.
I'll tell you what. In 6 years working at the Chiefs, and I think I made it to all but, like, obviously those last 2. If I would have stayed 2 more years, then I would have been at every stadium besides the new ones that opened up in between. But Buffalo was actually one of my favorite trips that we ever took to go anywhere. And I don't remember. It was just, we ran into a bunch of Chiefs fans. We actually ran into John Stoner, who at that time everybody knew him as, like, catsuit guy. He had a bunch of Chiefs fans, and Dan Joy and a bunch of guys that traveled up there. We ran into them at Anchor Bar, which now looking back is like the very touristy, like the original Buffalo wing. But I went there with my buddy Jordan. He hung out after we had taken an Uber to Niagara Falls.
Oh, nice.
It's only about 45 minutes to an hour. So it's like, I'm never going to come up here to visit. And so, like, I might as well go see it while we're close. And it was cool. Like, it was really cool. We went there, came back, went to Anchor Bar, ran into Chiefs fans, and then just went, like, bar hopping for a little bit. I think they played either afternoon or late the next day, or just went out. But it was one of the more fun trips that we had, just running the Chiefs fans and hanging out with them. But yeah, Buffalo, it was one place that it just seemed like, you talk about like a college atmosphere. Like, I was sitting in the press box having like some FOMO of watching the Buffalo fans just have fun and party, standing up the whole time, having a good time. Like, I love me some Buffalo fans a little bit. Nothing like Chiefs Kingdom, but I've got no qualms, with Buffalo fans. They always seem awesome. They take care of their own. There's a lot of examples of that. So
yeah, and they want to experience what Chiefs fans have experienced, right? I think it's sometimes it gets lost on Chiefs fans, and that's okay, because, like, you want your team to win, and, like, you feel like you're in the greatest era of the franchise's history, which is true.
Yeah.
The Bills have never experienced this. Like, the Bills have never hosted never hoisted the championship. So
If
they've never had a team this good, I believe, with obviously Von Miller in the mix. Man, like they want to experience what you guys have experienced. And that's what makes this rivalry really cool. It's just like obviously you have a lot of respect for that team. Obviously it's Sean McDermott coming from Andy Reid's coaching tree. Like it's all right there. Like it makes our job so easy from like a content standpoint. But yeah, like I'm ready for the next chapter in the rivalry. And I truly believe that is going to Buffalo and seeing that rabid fan base, maybe a game or two away from reaching the Super Bowl.
We talk about people that are like kind of our age, and if there's a fan base out there that can kind of understand what Chiefs fans have been through, it's Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the close. Like I was just looking up to make sure I got the years right. 1990, 1991, 1992, 1993. 4 years in a row of losing the Super Bowl. And granted, you get the excitement of going and the hoop, like all of that, but you lose 4 years in a row is the only fan base that can understand the Chiefs side of things, where we forget about it now. The Chiefs have the NFL record for most consecutive playoff losses in a row.
Yes.
Like, there's the only fan base that can understand it. And now we're on the other side of it and be somewhat respectful of it. We don't want, we're not going to let Buffalo take some of our golden years in that way. Not that we have any control over it, but I've got a soft spot for Buffalo a little bit, just because if there's somebody that can understand what we've been through, it's them for sure.
They gave the trade, right? They consummated the trade. Doug Whaley, shout out to him wherever he's doing, is the executive that worked with with Dorsey. And neither one of those guys are with the organizations anymore, which is fascinating. But they are the ones that put that trade together. Obviously, Brett Veach is involved, Andy Reid. You all know the Chiefs side of it. But they gave the draft pick for Patrick Mahomes. And then
that was set up like a week ahead of time.
Yes.
Like it was done. And then I remember like John telling the story of like every pick. He's like, we're still good. We're still good. Are we still good? Are we still good?
Please, Lord. So look, Buffalo helped the Chiefs acquire Patrick Mahomes. And I always thought that, man, the Bills are they're just gonna be a footnote to like this story in Chiefs history. Literally the next year they drafted Josh Allen, and now we're here. We're here. Yeah. It's one of the more it's one of the better quarterback team rivalries that I can think of in modern NFL. That is somewhat similar to like Cowboys 49ers of like the 80s and early 90s, where it's just like one of these teams is going to be in the AFC Championship, and more times than not, both teams are going to be in the AFC Championship game.
I just wish the quarterbacks hated each other. Like I just wish there was some animosity. Josh Allen just seems like a good dude. Like seems like a cool dude. He's golfing with Mahomes in the offseason, all that kind of stuff. Like seems like a good dude. All right, let's get to the final burning question I've got for you. So Chiefs next 3 games: 49ers, Titans, Jags. You get 4 options: 3-0, 2-1, 1-2, or 0-3. And if you say 0-3, we'll just end the show right.
All right. So in all 3 of these games, you have the better coach and the better quarterback. Now, Kyle Shanahan is really, really good, but I think Andy Reid is slightly better.
And they might get their dudes back. Trent Williams, Nick Bosa might be back for this game.
Correct. I want to say 3-0, like just on like initial reaction, because Andy Reid's coming off a bye week, so you have to include that into the mix. The Jaguars are not as good as I thought they would be this far into the season. It's interesting, man. I think one of the more inconsistent players has been, Trevor Lawrence, and they haven't played in Arrowhead Stadium. So I want to give the advantage to the Chiefs in that game. I don't know what to make.
Got a motivated Doug Peterson.
Yeah, true. But I don't know what to make of Tennessee. Like, is Tennessee good?
It wasn't what we thought they were going to be. The entire Chiefs schedule wasn't necessarily, not just the division, but I think I saw a tweet earlier today that, the Chiefs have the 13th easiest remaining schedule from here on out. And you look at the schedule, and even starting with those three, and I look through the rest of it, really not. I mean, Cincy, like maybe they figured some stuff out with the shotgun, throwing the ball around with Joe Burrow, but
Right.
Zach Taylor, that's just been kind of a mess so far this year. So nothing really looks even close to as difficult as the first 6 weeks for the Chiefs.
Right. And I just don't know how many times you're going to see Mahomes have a uneven game, or a game where he's great one moment and not so great the next, or he's great one moment and he's getting pressured into making a mistake at the end of the game. I don't know how many times you're going to see that this season. So I think my initial reaction, BJ, is to say 3-0. But I do understand that probably the hardest opponent in this 3-game stretch is Sunday against the 49ers. Now, here's a stat that I'm not sure everybody knows or is comprehended or tried to understand, but the Chiefs only have one interception this season.
Ooh, it was a big one.
It was a big one. It was a gigantic one.
Looking back, it was a huge interception.
It's partly why you're number one in the AFC West yet again through 6 weeks. But they only have one interception. And Jimmy Garoppolo, he can throw some interceptions here and there. Obviously, the Chiefs saw that in Super Bowl 54. So I want the secondary, if Trent McDuffie comes back, to just play a little bit better, maybe create, get in that mindset of creating turnovers if you have the opportunity to do so. But if the 49ers stay on their game script, then, yeah, this can be a really interesting, fun, close game in the fourth quarter. The obvious game script for the Chiefs is to dominate early, get up 2 scores, maybe get that turnover early, and force Jimmy Garoppolo into clear drop-back situations where he still is somewhat inconsistent at times. Now, he can deliver a pretty ball if a guy is schemed open and he is open and there's the threat of running the football, and he has obviously better protection with Trent Williams covering his backside. But I think the 49ers are probably the harder team, but there is a path to a pretty comfortable victory at the same time. But it does depend on the Chiefs' defense at some point this season catching more than one pass from the opposing quarterback.
For sure. I think those are great points. And yeah, I agree with you that of those three, San Francisco, because of Shanahan, they've got some pieces, and the other group, you have no idea what to make of the Titans. And the Jags just inconsistent with a young quarterback.
I just can't. I mean, sometimes you're just like, do I even want to watch that game? Do I even want to look at their stats? I don't even what are they?
This is Chiefs go out and take care of business. They're going to roll off a stretch of wins here. We see it every single year. They get into a groove at some point. What is it? End of October for Spagnuolo. It's always that first 6 weeks kind of all over the place, and then they hit a groove and get it going. But yeah, getting Willie Gay back, getting these young guys, they're going to be getting better. Get consistent. We need to get my guy at least. I'm going to keep wearing this one, but the George Karlaftis, we need to get back. We need to get some quarterbacks on the ground to hit that rookie sack record that I talk so much about.
Now, this is to George Karlaftis' point. This is me, I guess, advocating for him on his behalf. Unlike the Bills, unlike the Broncos, who played like Davis Mills and who played like an improved Geno Smith. Hey, you did do well against Justin Herbert. I mean, Matt Ryan's he's not great, guys. He's not good anymore. George Karlaftis has probably played the most athletically gifted set of quarterbacks to start his NFL career than I think most people realize. It's Kyler Murray, which all you tell your DNs is don't get embarrassed. Don't just contain him. That was the biggest thing in week 1, and they did that. Week 2 is Justin Herbert, and it's just good luck trying to sack this man. And of course, the Chargers had a better offensive line at the time. But hey, he's a freak. There was a moment early in the game on Sunday, if you want to rewatch Chiefs Bills again, where George Karlaftis is I'm in the proper spot. I got my rush lane. Josh Allen is right in my sights. Why is he running away from me? And that's just that's how hard it is, kids, to get a sack of Josh Allen. That's how great Chris Jones is, because he actually won a rare one-on-one on third down and obviously got to the quarterback. But for George Karlaftis, you would think maybe the difficulty level from the opposing quarterback sort of gets more to like normal NFL levels.
Yeah, so all we need to do is average 1 sack a game from here on out, and we'll hit that record that we talked about. So
yeah, and look, he did get to hit Derek Carr, who is not those guys that I talked about earlier. There might be more Derek Carrs than Josh Allen's,
like Jimmy Garoppolo's.
As you move forward through the season, there will be no better.
And if Trent Williams doesn't play,
well. You're right.
He's the best left tackle maybe he'd ever play.
Yeah.
So, or at least he's up there.
Yeah. So I mean, like there's still opportunity for him to grow and get better production.
Yeah.
But when I really do think about like all these rookies and what they're going through, for George, it was so fascinating because it's just like, yeah, man, like the most statuesque quarterback you've played is Matt Ryan. And y'all got all the sacks in that game. You personally did it, but that was the most productive game they had rushing the quarterback because he was a statue. And now everybody else is scrambling or making life really difficult. And I just, hey, ask Justin Reed. Hey, Justin, perfect spot. I'm gonna end this run. Why is he hurdling me for 7 more yards? How? You know?
And here's a good question for you, because it's not making excuses for George Karlaftis on the field, because overall, I think he's played well. Mm-hmm. He hasn't necessarily brought the quarterback down, but he's had the pressures, the disruption, no qualms about how he's played. The receipts are starting to pop up as people are talking about the pass rushing. They're like, wait a second. BJ said that this guy was going to do this. One thing might be worth asking Spags, and for you guys who are there every day are asking Karlaftis about this. And I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, that in a lot of these blitz situations, as much as the Chiefs are blitzing, I mean, they were blitzing almost 50% of the time. It seemed like against Josh Allen, looking at some of the PFF numbers afterwards. But when they're calling some of these defensive back blitzes and sending Snead and all these guys from all over the place, a lot of the times the edge rusher's job is to occupy the offensive line, that whether the tackle, the guard come across the face, where yes, they might clean up a sack here and there, but their job is to basically create a free lane for Snead to do his job. And so that can affect his ability in some of these obvious passing situations and not bringing down the quarterback. So you're smart people that are there every time ask these questions.
You are spot on, because you essentially become furniture and you become a framework, right? You are the frame of which we are structuring the blitz. So if we got, if it's a 6-man protection, 7-man protection, hey, if that running back, flattens out or goes into the flat, maybe your framework changes where you want to make sure that you're staying with him, because obviously there are people coming behind you going to the quarterback. But if the protection sort of stays where it is and you've manipulated the protection to your advantage, then you essentially become furniture, or you become a frame for everything to sort of build off of. And it doesn't sound fun. And I think people get upset about Frank Clark because they're like, why isn't he giving second and third efforts? But it's like, the frame doesn't work if he's outside the frame. If we blitz and I'm supposed to be on a certain frame, if Josh Allen gets behind me, there's nobody, because it's either cover 0 or cover 1. So I think for some fans, it's hard to sort of understand that, but it's like, Frank Clark did his job because he's now occupied the tackle, or George Karlaftis has done it because he's occupied the tackle or the tight end or the running back. And now you got to stay, because if you over pursue, or if you take that, poor Joshua Williams, he got home on a blitz largely because of this. He got home on a blitz because the framework was put in place, and now we have a free runner. And he took his shot, and Josh Allen was like, son, let me just move up out the way. And he scrambled for 6 or 7 yards. But it's like, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's not
the other guys on.
Yeah, that's not on the
guys on scholarship too.
Yeah, that's not the defensive line's problem. That's not the coordinator's problem. It ain't even the cornerback's problem. Sometimes the dude's just great, man. And Joshua,
luckily they see that in practice every day. Sometimes you're just like, you know what? That guy's pretty damn good.
Yeah. It's a first half blitz. It's perfectly drawn up. They can only protect so much. And Josh Allen's just like, well, I'll just tilt the game back in our favor, because he's just He's great. He's better than Justin Herbert is, and I wasn't sure if that was going to be the case this season. And I'm happy to be surprised by this development that he's improved at a faster rate than Justin Herbert has so far.
Mahomes and Allen are on a different tier than everyone else. That has become very obvious. And Nate, you are on a different tier than everyone else, and that's how we are going to wrap up this show. That is him. You can find him on Twitter by Nate Taylor. We appreciate your time, and that's all we've got for today's KCSN update. We appreciate everybody for stopping by, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. Thank you for your support of what we got going on. We'll have plenty more good content throughout the week to get you ready for Chiefs and 49ers Sunday afternoon, 3:25 local time, or I should say Central Standard Time, from San Francisco. So thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see y'all next time.